Well,
Not ready? No. I think never. Yes.
how are you?
Summer, right? You can rest immediately. You're not even. Finally got over it. St. Eric's one off the oldest bigger. And I have not my own nerves yet. It's wonderful. Because the whole was freezing. And I took the whole thing. And actually the first thing I heard on the temperature was very big. So even though my temperature is 72, the other are from 65. So the only heat is very relaxing. Work out. Just have to like. Also, yeah, you went outside and rubbed the so my sister daughter, all under 5, and they also had but the biggest problem is for kids friendly. This was so awesome. Now, are you getting
If we want to, so we have to get together.
last year?
I still remember. Well, then it was like 3 hours.
No, before you go.
Yes, he told me.
Double fisting. Okay, guys. Mansoor and I are going to tag team. Sometimes when you go to a concert, before the main act comes out on the stage, there's a warm-up. And so I'm the warm-up act before Mansoor comes. Most of what we do today is going to be question and answer. And I hope that most of you have the handout. It's the hard copy of a page from the website. Is that there? I see some. So we're going to work from that. But before we do, all right. No, they're not coasters. And you had 2?
I got like 4.
So if anyone needs some more, there's some up here. So what I would like to do is, I think I've got 5 slides. The purpose of the 5 slides literally is the warm-up act for the discussion about the CTO. Mansoor Saleh, as you know, joined us in January as medical director of the CTO. And after the warm-up, we'll turn it over to him. But as we talked about this evening, we thought it might be helpful to have at least a brief introduction to what's happening nationally in terms of clinical trials, because my suspicion is that many of us may not know about it, but they're really important ways. There's also, we have one slide about local expectations for clinical trials, and all of this is positioned to then say, as you want to learn about these things, where can you go in the CTO? What's the CTO doing? And when you need help, who do you call? Okay, so that's the frame. I think there are actually 7 slides. One is an introduction with the title. One asks, are there any questions? So, some national trends that are really important for us to know about. There is a national trend for clinical trial office certification. This is going to go on an institutional basis, not on an individual investigator basis, not on an individual investigator's unit basis. This is going to be based on UAB, and we're pitching for national certification. It's going to be on a UAB basis. 2 parallel thrusts for doing this. One is through NCATS, which is the NIH Institute sponsoring the CCTS, and the other is through biopharma, which is the profit. A couple of elements of the CTO certification. One is going to be the education and certification of all clinical trial personnel, coordinators, nurses, PIs, and good clinical practice. Now, the nature of that certification program for GCP is currently under development. There's not yet a full consensus as to exactly what it's going to be, but I think it's very obvious it's going to happen. Just to decode that, the National Board of Medical Examiners wants in because they see an opportunity to charge fees. AAMC doesn't think that's such a good idea, so they're trying to position themselves to do it. And by the way, NIH thinks it ought to be in the business, or at least in the practice of GCP. So we don't know yet who's going to be the certifier, but the certification is going to happen. The second thing, as part of CTO certification, is going to be the assessment of how well we do as an organization in all the research administration pieces, which include confidentiality agreements, contracts, it's our OSP, it's our IRD. You may wonder how that's going to go. Well, you already know, I hope, that each individual pharma already collects these data. And they know who's fast, they know who's slow, they know how long, they know better than we know how long it takes. They have decided in the pre-competitive space that they're going to share that information. And that's going to be through a company which has already been formed. It's an activity which has been going on now for almost a year called Transcelerate. Transcelerate is now, this slide is already out of date. I think it's up to 14 major pharma have all agreed to share their data. It's going to be pooled, and then they're going to know institution X does a good job, institution Y doesn't do a good job. When pharma has a trial, which do you think they're going to call first? They're going to call the institution that have performs well. Second thing that's going to happen is what we'll call cohort identification. There's two initiatives, again, both actually driven by NCATS and NIH, but then with a pharma twist with Trinetics and a total NIH twist with Shrine. The idea here is with these informatics tools, pharma through Trinetics is going to be able to know, in fact, without our knowing, if they want to do a trial in, I'm looking for Luke, if they want to do a trial in gout, they're going to be able to find out how many patients with gout we have based on our electronic health record. And if we say, and our records show we've got adequate patients to be recruited, we may get a phone call. If we're either not part of this or we don't have the patients, the calls never going to come. The third, and this is really totally NIH driven by Francis Collins, is scientific rigor and reproducibility. Francis has already gone on public record that he is going to require this of all NIH-funded trials. It's really doing what the Cancer Center is already doing, and that's rigorous methodological review of all clinical trials, clinical studies, but it's going to go beyond the oncology space to everything else. So we got some ideas. So what's the CTO doing? We've gone through this map of activities and tried to define what we, research administration and clinical cases office, what we within the CCTS and the CTO, we realize this is a partnership between the two orgs to pull this off. What are we trying to do? First of all, we're working on performance standards. CDAs, you can read that list, clinical trial agreements, IRB approval times, budget standards, and federally compliant procedures. So we're working on that with the CTO. With regard to good clinical practice, training through CRISP within the CCTS, we have programs that are now available to coordinators. The anticipation is that everybody will participate, and will have participated, and we'll figure out with your help how to log that in. And the discussions with clinical trialists on the faculty, how to extend this to faculty, those discussions. So there is, I should say, the commitment on the part of our institutional leadership to get all of these things done. For scientifically reproducible research, we're going to be very straightforward and copy what the Cancer Center does. Take the best practices for scientific review and make that available for other content areas. And in terms of rigorous implementation, I hope you all know all the capacities that are available through CRISP. Those of you who don't know the acronym, CRISP stands for Clinical Research Support. And Penny, you're here this evening and can answer any questions about that. So those are the three national trends. There's actually a fourth we can talk about at another time if you like. What are our local expectations? So the clinical trial office was really put together with two major domains of expectation. The first is growth in the clinical trials portfolio. Of course, if we're not certified and we don't have GCP qualified individuals, we can't grow our portfolio because we're not getting those phone calls. Excellence in all phase trials, phase 1, 2, 3, so that we are known as a place to come to for clinical trials, not only for patients seeking innovative therapies, but also for sponsors wanting to do care. And then obviously we have to build effective relationships. We can talk about how we're going to do that. Also appropriate and efficient financing and billing. So part of that is budget standards. I hope all of you know there has been a lot of work really led by Carolyn and your group to develop budget standards that will apply across our enterprise. Part of that, but not limited to that, is being federally compliant so that we make sure we bill once appropriately, not 3 times inappropriately. You may smile, but sometimes it doesn't always work exactly as it should. And the other is that we are all aware of the financial structure of a study before we buy into it. By buy-in, that's probably the wrong word to use, before we commit to doing it. And if it's going to be a study on which we anticipate losing money, we know why we're doing it. And we have actually declared up front that this is going to require an investment, rather than at the end saying, whoops, we're short, and how are we going to cover that shortfall? So, with those 3 things, that warm-up act lasted 4 minutes longer than I expected on Zoom, but it's now my job to go get a second round of an IPA and ask you to come up.
You gotta stay for the questions here.
Right.
You know, last time I went to a concert, Lady Gaga was a sideshow, stole the show.
Oh, wow.
That's what obviously.
Do I look like Lady Gaga?
So, you know, I didn't know about this. Bob told me about a week ago, so just to show up, a few people come, they bring wine, and you would have something non-alcoholic. And the reason they put me in the front page is because they knew that I would have to pay the bill, number one. And if I come, I don't drink, he gets my drink. So that's the bonus thing. So, most of you may know me because I was a fellow here a long time ago. And then I rose to the rank of whatever I do in the Texas Career, I was my mentor. I left UAB to go to private practice to run the clinical trial network in Atlanta. That group saw 18,000 new patients, 60% oncology, was the machine. So we said if we could link up with those guys in the community, we could really accrue very well to clinical trial. I learned a couple of things. That research is a business, that every penny counts. If you don't get it in your pocket, somebody else is getting it. So I learned that. I learned very quickly that compliance is very important because I got a 483 from the FDA for being delinquent in overseeing the clinical research program. So I know exactly what it means to be a principal investigator. And thirdly, I realized that time to trial activation is very, very critical. So we used to export trials from here to Georgia Cancer Specialty in Atlanta, do the same trial. We would budget 30% more than UAB would get. We didn't have to pay the dean the 26%. The dean was us, so we get 26% plus 20%. And our child transformation was at least a third faster than UAB because we don't have the regulatory machinery that is required for the executive center. So if you look at it, the reason to have a medical director in the CTO is basically to be the voice of the investigator. You see that there's the machinery, there's Carolyn, there's Penny, there's a whole team working on behalf of us. But even when I was a fellow faculty, I did not know the existence of the CTO. It was like a granite. There's always a grandmother in every family. You do not know whether she exists or not. She's there somewhere, and the kids misbehave, someone's going to straighten them out. So there is a granite. It's not a granite, it's a very young, dynamic group of people. But I think the objective of the CTO medical director is basically to let you know it exists, what we do on your behalf, but more importantly, what we expect of you on behalf of the enterprise of research. There's not going to be an individual whose name becomes known, but we want to use your coattails to be sure that UAB gets known like the Greeks of the world and the Indians so that people come to us. So the three things I learned in investigation is one, time to trial activation. And although Bob and I did not really dovetail in our program, you would see that the slide that he talked about exactly what I think about in the investigation. TTA, in my opinion, is the day you get your CDA and the day you recruit the first patient. That is the time then that the pharma says how long it took for us to do the trial in your institution. For phase 1, of which I'm also the director here at UAB, Texas Cancer Center, 187 days for TPO. CDA to first patient on study. It's nearly 6 months. At that time, I'm sure at the embassies of the world, they put in a couple of patients, you're getting into the third dose level, this goes to the MTD, your patient experienced toxicity, and say, gosh, I've never come on a phase 1 trial because you got the MTD dose for your last 2 patients. Well, we need to do better. In the last 4 months, we moved in the cancer center from 187 days to 111 days. It's only possible because you need to have a driver who drives the process, but we should be able to do the same thing for every division. The second is compliance. There is no question that we need to be compliant physically, in terms of budget-wise, regulatory, but also in terms of education. So why? Because I got the 483, there was a 10-page from BFD that said exactly what I did wrong as a PI for study, even though I was overseeing 12 other people. They may have been the guys who did the mistakes. A granny gets caught, and I was the one who said, by the way, this is what happens to you. I don't think most of our investigators know today, and in your division, I'm sure, a number of fellows and faculty members are your sub-investigators, and you are the PI. They enroll patients, you have no clue how rigorous they review the patient. You don't meet with them. When the FDA asks you, what is your oversight of your investigator team? You say, well, the nurse is my oversight. She makes sure that those guys are paying attention. What about doing that with the IRS? I think compliance is very critical, and part of the education process will be exactly that. That we have to be more compliant because someone will be watching who does things correctly. And the last part is fiscal. Ravi got from the Hemop division this year. The question is, how much money do we bring into the division? In the last 6 phase 1 trials that we've activated here, brand new trials from 3 companies we have brand new, brought here to UAB. We've been able to negotiate at least between 27 and 40%, 42% increase in what they would have offered us otherwise. Hardcore negotiation, Carla's here, somewhere here, she's helping us to know exactly every minute you spend has to be expended for by other than because every minute you spend, either you see a patient or you get paid for by pharma. We can do the same as long as we have it outlined as to what our money, what our time is worth. So I think if we do the TTA, the time transportation, compliance, and then the fiscal management of our budget, I think we should be a good program. And then the question is, does the CTO help you? I know we hear a lot of complaints about the CTO, what do you think, what do they really do? I think it would be an open book, very transparent, and if you all want to come take a few more bottles of wine, I think it would be great. So I think a few more of these meetings to allow us to say, tell us what we do not do right, what we can do better, but come a few months from now, all these expectations Bob talked about will be on our case. And I think our job is to be ahead of the curve and not be behind it because others already are ahead of us. That we need to be able to be there as well. Because we are as good as them. The only question is, do we want to be there when another week's around? So we take questions, Bob to get questions, it's Carolyn for fiscal management, thinking about education, and yeah.
One of the things that Bob mentioned was, the fact that they're going through this administration where then we have to work with OSD and contracting and everything in order to, get studies activated in a timely fashion. And is that something that's simultaneously being worked on?
Right. Let me you talk about the processes that happen, first of all, can we talk about it briefly? So, if you want to go with the processes that happen, when I have a farmer approaching me and I say, send me the CDA, can you walk through the process that happens in practical terms, and then maybe you can answer Ravi's question.
And so, was the question just what are we doing to evaluate the process?
Or to improve, or to hasten it, or...
So, one of the individuals who's not here is Dr. Jason Nichols, and he is leading the Office of Industry Engagement. And he and his team, we're working very closely with them to get data from not only processing of CEAs by OSP, but processing of the clinical trial agreements. And making sure that we understand how long it is taking in the on the OSP side. Many times what we see from the current data is that OSP may have the clinical trial agreement ready to execute, but we could be waiting multiple days for an IRB approval. So one of the things that you probably will see on our CTO website is a best process for clinical trial activation, the CPAP process. And so it gives you a best practice for how you should submit and when you should submit your clinical trial agreement along with your IRB submission, and at what point you should actually get your coverage analysis, which is what Dr. Kimberly and Dr. Scully alluded to earlier, as far as being compliant with our billing procedures. If we can, there it is, budget CPAP process. Right? Yeah, there you go. So many of the people in this room, Carla, Penny, Renee, several people in this room were part of the work group that worked together probably 4 or 5 years ago. We developed this best practice. So what we often see though is that when the clinical trial agreement goes to OSP, it could be 2 to 4 weeks later before the IRB is submitted. So OSP rushes to execute that contract to get it ready to execute, but we don't have an IRB approval and they will not release the award without the IRB approval. The other thing that we see happen often is that if you'll notice, there's 3 things happening in sequence down toward the lower part. The department's negotiating the final budget, and that final budget has as its foundation the appropriate coverage analysis that's going to prove our coverage accountability review team. So the department's negotiating the final budget while OSP is negotiating terms and conditions of the clinical trial agreement, while the IRB is also reviewing the IRB approval. Those things should flow together at the bottom. Sometimes what we see though, and this may speak to just difficult budget negotiations, difficult sponsors, we may have IRB approval, contract ready to execute, we don't yet have a final budget, and OSP cannot execute without a final budget. So we're doing a lot of digging into the details. That was a long answer to your question, but a lot of digging into the details to see where can we streamline the process. In the clinical billing review area, we're revising all of our forms and trying to streamline the forms. We're soon we'll be piloting that process with 3 of the areas that I believe are represented in this room. So I think there's a lot of work underway to make sure that on the research administration side, we want to be as efficient as possible.
Carolyn, if someone has a question about how to more effectively negotiate a budget, so we're not talking about constructing the budget based on internal price structure, but negotiating a budget, where should they go? Who should they talk to?
Negotiation of budget. So I will probably put that question back to you.
So you don't have to Carla, I will send them to Mansoor.
Well, that's where I was headed.
I always get the Indian guy, but all that doesn't come from India. What we've done is, Carla, with a team at the phase 1 program in the Cancer Center, we've really itemized how long it takes to do a certain thing. For example, when I was a fellow, every week, phase 1, you would have a phase 1 telecon with the sponsor. 3 sites, phase 1, n equals 3. We talk about toxicity, so we go to the next dose level. We spend at least an hour talking about that. We were not billing for that 1 hour. Only just recently, the Cancer Center, we said, well, by the way, you're going to bill for that hour. It's your nurse and me in my thought process, Georgia Cancer was building an hour period. We at the cancer area did the same other way. What is the hour's work for the physician? We came up with a figure, I won't tell you the figure. The nurse's hourly rate was just about 20% lower than my hourly rate. Now, maybe they're certainly better than I am in terms of investigation. But certainly, I think we need to have a benchmark as to what is the hourly rate for a physician and a PI and a research nurse and a data manager. I think we can sit down. So we have a menu of the cancer executive. These are the SOPs for the line items that make up the budget. This is where it takes time, and then you can multiply the per hour rate for nurses, physicians, and you come up with a figure. Just to give you an example, even after 40% increase in the per patient rate that we negotiated, we felt good about it. I talked to three of the sites who do the same stuff, and our colleagues of mine, so we can share this information. They were 30% above us, but there is money to be made. The question is, if you leave it on the table, the CRO gets what you do not get, because they get a fixed amount from the sponsor. So when you look at the dynamic, you know exactly where the money is going. But I think, what?
No, I think you are taking the rate for positive tissue. We are always out of the loop. Somehow.
I agree. I think you have to have your voice. You know, if you don't raise your voice, you forget that you exist.
I'm raising my voice.
So I agree. I
That's
think
why we're getting together.
Thank you very much.
what was the
And Mansour, I realize you can't do budgets for every clinical trial in the institution, but you do have a relevant experience, which is in several different domains, including the Georgia Cancer Center. Are you willing to sometimes provide advice in terms of budget negotiations with sponsors? Because that really doesn't fall to your group. Your group is to say, UAB and EKG is whatever
Remember,
EKG a month,
for a
whatever
budget,
EKG is.
for a budget, there's an expense side. What does it cost me? And then there's, what can I charge the sponsor? So what's the revenue for the sponsor? We're focused on getting you an accurate cost. You're talking about negotiating the revenue for the sponsor.
Also the cost of what is my sure. That we usually forget. Those are the intangibles we seem to overcome. The CT scan and the EKGs, we seem to build as 25% profit, but the human resource time is a big item that we seem to forget.
While I ask one other question, Christina, can you go back up to the main page? If there, I have to go up a couple of levels, sorry. So one thing we would ask this group to do is, of this main page, you have hard copies, which obviously on the web. Take a look. Ask yourself, is the information there useful in terms of directing you to whom you would contact to get answers to your questions? Because if it's not, we'll revise the information that's there. So from that, if you scroll down, you probably see 6 people, I believe, with sort of the major task areas. Okay, going down. And if you have budgeting or compliance, you would contact you, Carolyn. And if you had an issue, and Robbie, I think you asked about facilitating administrative processes.
Well, I was sort of getting to the point that you said we're going to be judged on, how well we, process these trials, and
Does this web page, does this particular photo on this web page help you understand who you would call to clarify an issue? Yes. I'm making a little bit light of it, but the whole point of this is give the information of who to call for which problem. Because obviously there are a number of different issues in terms of pulling together an effective study. And part of our goal is to help people understand where they can find solutions, where they can find answers, where they can find advice. And in that sense, so you've been fantastic in bringing a perspective that we were just not cognizant of.
Maybe the cardiologists have a different perspective. But if you look at this, when we did the arithmetic for 3 cycles of chemotherapy, 1 cycle being maybe 3 weeks, if everything was built to insurance, so you don't have to pay for the CAT or CBC, just the human resource requirement was 6.5K per patient. And this is bare bone, my FTE per hour, nurse data manager. Everything else is paid by center of care. Right? That means if you get at least oncology, maybe different from cardiology, etc. If you don't get at least 6.5K per patient, you are under to begin with. And then you do your CT scan and pay you 10%, the administration of that, plus 10% profit. Minimum for an oncology trial where everything was built to insurance, you put 20% on anything that was study related, plus the resource requirement of the staff, we about 40. And we can show you that, and at least you can then peg it to say what your administrative costs are, and how things work differently. I know in cardiology things are rather different, so you look at that as being really inflated.
Well, so I hope this doesn't become our cancer's focus. There's a lot more outside of cancer focus. There are multiple issues that are specific to each group of products. For ours, I know that a lot of we have a lot of issues with the hospital. It's not this kind of activation. I'm curious how you're going to reduce this. This has been an issue ever since I've been here. And it's still around 6 months, or more sometimes. And it's not just OSP, it's not just it is the hospital, which has to sign off on particularly our departments, which are device-based departments. That's an important issue. The other issue is that the devices are particularly problematic because no longer close. And patients will not want to use devices. And this is a negotiation because the box of these Blue Cross Blue Shield because they have to accommodate our patient's decision. And they will not pay for the cases. So if you want to put UAB on the map for cardiology enrollment, that has to be solved, or else we'll never do it.
So, if I can, one of the purposes of this page is to identify people who can help address the issues and solve the problems that you're facing. So when you scroll through, I would suggest the contact person, and Jason is not here this evening, but we've had these discussions with Jason. Your contact for that, initial contact is Jason. So it doesn't go off into a black hole where it struggles to get attention. He's the person who's charged with facilitating the solution to those issues.
I think I agree with you. I was about the same thing that we saw before it happened. But I think for now, at least have some transparency, at least a point person who's reliable, responsible, and is a metric judged to his or her performance. I think, and as you can see, the competition really is revving up faster. And Bobby talked about the fact that the number of consortiums put together, you've got UT consortium, etc. So there are big Walmarts out there. So the little guy, whoever else, may be left behind. The pharma says CTA there, and the hospital is not paying for. It's really our empathy. Even with oncology, if you look at 100% of the per patient budget, 20% goes to the physician, investigator for his role as a caseworker. 30% of the nursing data management. A third goes to the hospital in terms of CT scans, etc. Things that would not have been done if the patient was on the clinical trial because they would be going somewhere else. So clearly the hospital has a benefit in one way or the other. This is just direct cost. All the other ancillary costs. In the last 3 months that I've been here, I opened up a little to get that number, not because I was a more patient, but to attract the multiples of the world to come and be part of the clinical research program. Half the patients who come who are not eligible for clinical trial, half of those end up staying in UAB that would not have come otherwise. So we can also make a case to hospitals that there is revenue to be made, difficult stuff, intangible, but that does not answer your question directly, but people like Jason and others, clearly, that's our job in the CTO to at least make this happen, at least step-by-step. Every division clearly has their own issue, idea, technology, but in terms of what it costs and how to really build for what it requires to do a study, that's really standing. At least we have that algorithm available.
What's the goal for your relationship with the CTO with individual units that are doing research? because cardiology, rheumatology, IV, lots of places have bootstrapped over 20, 25 years. We have a pretty good system. Clearly, there's things that could be better. But who is your target audience here? Is it the established investigator base that is up and running and might have an occasional question? Is it a group that's trying to struggle to start their own research program, clinical trials? Or, what do you see as the vision and how this will interact with the nascent investigators and or the established treatment centers?
So let the slideshow goes first and answer the question, and the main accurates the popular first before
Oh, I'll let you take first crash.
See, my feeling is the repertoire that we want to offer, educating our physicians, being able to be compliant, and being sure that when we bill for a study is done. And that will be applicable to anybody. Somebody opening a shop today, including the cardiologist and the oncologist and the IDs of the world, we say, by the way, probably school together. So I think we'd like to do it for everyone. The youngest, what I've seen is the young fellow who's starting research does not know the importance of education. And when they become a PI, they are left behind in terms of how to do the budget. So listen, the nurse will do that for you, and there's a coordinator for you. I think if you want to be an investigator, you've got to be top to bottom. ICF, education, how to do the budget, and be sure that OSP, what OSP does for you. And be involved and call them up if things are not working in tandem for you, or call up the key link person. I would think that we would want to be the user for every consumer, although the people who do research actively all the time may not need us. But I think there is also some lessons learned for them as well.
Have you met with the large groups?
Good point. So when I met with Anu comes to say, by the way, I'm here and I walk in the shop and say, that sort of the first thing you learn when you go to new places, talk with everybody who are your consumers, who are your retail carriers. So well, I didn't do that. I had to start at least a phase 1 program based on trials available so I could at least justify my existence. We finally have 6 new trials, etc., etc. But now we have this open show where we'll be going out and talking to every user of the CGO to say, where does rubber meet the road and where is a pebble hurt your soul? I think that should be my responsibility at least. And I know enough of the investigators to be able to have an open discussion. So what is it that bothers you most in terms of the investigation?
Well, I wouldn't limit it to the users with CTO. I would love to see who's doing the study with them. Because I know cardiology has 4 or 5 different clinical trials units in there that you subdivision. Well, you do consolidate. Yeah, they used to. But go talk to the people that are doing the work to see what you think. You may have done that already. But it's one thing to have an open house and say we want you to come, versus a different thing by saying we want to see what we can do to help you. We're going to come meet with you, look at your shop, see what you're doing, what are the specific needs that you have, and see what we can help you do. I think clearly there's a lot of advantages to doing this. But if you rely on the investigators to come see you, you may not get as much traction as quickly as if you go to individual shops and say, what are the unique challenges to cardiology, to IV, to whatever it is, and what can we do specifically to help you? You may have already done this through surveys or other things as well. I think there's nothing like face-to-face, sitting down with the regulatory and budget people, the people that are boots on the ground doing the work, and say, this is what resources we have, and we can help you. What help do you need?
I agree. I think the program that Penny runs, where we educate nurses, coordinators, physicians, etc., those handle with the budget, I think it can't be one person. We need to have a team. We also involve the physicians who are investigators who've done this for a living and do it well to be part of this whole process. I think as part of the curriculum that Penny and Bob are putting together for education, there should be one component, by the way, how do you build the budget and what is the best way to do that for the month. You're right. I think we need to go out. It should be neutral, I think. We should raise our hand to say, by the way, I need some help, or listen, we got that really well, come and talk to me. I think that's exactly where I'm here to be the conduit of the voice, to say, by the way, here are the complaints, here are the benefits. We have to be better than we've done it. And I think the commitment that I had is because I was trained, I'm the product of this institution. I know that people out there do it better, and my hope is that can we come back? There's a commitment in my part to say, by the way, we can be better than we are, and we should be out there, and we should be committed. But there are issues. Carolyn is here, Lois is here. The CDA at MDS for oncology is 6 hours, maximum 24 hours. We are counting 6 days to 24 days sometimes. Obviously, we got to do something about it. But by the same token, even in the cancer center, you look at the time the investigator sits on responding to the critical scientific review, goes from 20 days to 120 days because the guy went on vacation and then got fired. Well, so we
Oh, I'm not on the list.
so we identified a navigator, and we are doing a navigator. So by the way, you chart that particular protocol, so where it is in every day, and see where it is, and tell somebody. So by the way, this thing is stopped. This train is stopped at a certain station. We do not know what's happening to it. So a number of things we can do. But I will be coming out. Hopefully, people will say, "Well, come and meet me because I'm more issue." That'll be a mutual.
But I think there's a lot of advantages of doing this in this way, because, you know, look at the clinical trials unit that we have within our division, and they do a very good job. But if someone leaves, the only transition is, well, the old guy left his filing cabinet behind, and here you go. And there's no, you know, there's suboptimal training and education. So I think the committee that Tim's put together and the job that Tim and Bob have done is very, you know, they serve a very important purpose.
So we're moving to, for example, research nurses are difficult to get, especially in some specialty. And now, among nurses, you can do the CRC job very well if you train them well. And physicians is difficult to be investigated well. Mid-level providers could be in the 15, 17. So I think there's a trend to be able to go to a lower level training requirement, but clearly compliant to be important. And you want to talk about?
Only one thing I want to say is so we don't forget it, but part of the CRISP program, it's not only education, but if you're an experienced PI and you have a large enterprise and you lose a study coordinator, the CRISP program is built to provide study coordinators for shorter or long term, 10%, 100%, whatever's needed, but it will provide investigators with resources that they may not have readily available. So just, again, you may have no.
Who do those coordinators report to?
Well, initially they report to me, but once you hire them, they report to you, and they can sit in your office and do whatever you need them to do. Or
hire them for part-time?
Yep, part-time, full-time.
One of the issues that was with the, whatever this, the clinical trials that was in the ICANN issue, what it's called.
Yes, I was.
Office of Clinical Research.
Yep.
You know, we not me personally, but several investigators in our group said, yeah, let's use that nurse, and they would call and they'd say the patient can come Thursday at 11 a.m. and we would get the message, well, we don't have a nurse now. Can you reschedule the patient?
It's a different model.
Okay.
Different modeling. We have we've been in business for maybe 5 years, and we have not refused.
And I can vouch for that, for example, for the phase 1 unit, we wanted to say they all come to JT15. Physicians go there, all patients go there. So at the moment, in the phase 1, the patient would come to the TKC, physicians would see them, the patient would go and get study agent up on JT15. So what do we take to get the patient to go up to JT15 and get it done right there? It wasn't a big deal. The big deal was we couldn't get a CBC. It took 3 hours, and we timed it, 3 hours to get a CBC and CMP, because the tube system somehow was not quite the highway. It got stuck somewhere. So we called Penny. So now we have a human road runner who takes the CBC back to TKC and come back. Our timing is about 17 minutes. That's right. We lost a nurse because he or she was on vacation and got sick. We called the CRISP program so that we wanted a nurse for hire. I think it's we haven't publicized ourselves. We should clearly have a bigger repertoire of staff. I think in resources that we really not talked about, they can be utilized effectively. And that's it. When we use the model for the next 1 week, what best?
Additionally, we shouldn't forget the resources that are available on JT15 for inpatient or in outpatient, I should say, services. That if you need a place to go and you need a nurse to conduct some assessments.
Bert, you want to talk about that? Did you run the place? You've been running this for a long time, and the CRU upstairs is different food.
So, the CRU does provide space and nurses. It's a slow transition. We were the GCRC, the GCIR, now the CRU. And there is a lot of flexibility with what can be provided, and there's a spectrum of different types of research, phase 1B to 3 nutrition studies that can be supported. With this, Mansour, myself, we all have our own individual, efforts that we're trying to undertake. in trying to develop opportunities that are standardized, they're reliable and reproducible for the institution, so we're all not battling this individually. Relative to your comments, Lou, I met with Cindy Joyner in cardiology. I did go to cardiology. I found it over there in Kinsley Harrison. Met with Mark Dransfield in pulmonary. I'm the vice chair for neurology, so Susan and I have been, looking for ways in which we can improve upon, what we're trying to deliver and offer, recognizing, we're all pulled in 20 different ways and understaffed and underfunded and, trying to come up with ways to allow everybody to get done what they want to get done. I think that between, the phase 1 program with the university, and I know, Monsieur and I are both in oncology, despite the fact I'm a neurologist, that's a heavy emphasis, but between the phase 1 program and the CRU, the CRISP program, and then the clinical trials office, the goal is to hopefully make this where we all can be more productive and not get bogged down in these, battles where we're, stuck in the mud and not making, forward progress. And I think as Dr. Kimberly said, with everything that we're doing, there's going to be increasing oversight and expectations that we are following standards that are, allow us to provide really reproducible and reliable results. We can't do that, but we quickly find ourselves irrelevant in the research mission of this country.
Penny, perhaps you could, thank you, Penny, perhaps you could comment on, just in broad terms, the pattern of CRISP participation protocols over the last couple of years, like make up some numbers and you can provide real numbers or make them up. 3 years ago, we worked on 3 protocols. This year, we're working on.
So I will tell you that, and again, it's going to be a little, I have these on the slide somewhere, but I didn't bring them with me. When we started about 4 years ago, we had 1.2 FTEs who were working. And that was how much effort we had to work on a clinical trial. That's when we first started. Now we have 6 full-time research nurse coordinators, 6 non-nurse coordinators, because we do like to provide services in other ways, plus about 11 part-time people. We try to tap into people on campus who may have not enough funding from their own departments, so we will tap into those folks if they do this. We are probably, we're in the School of Health, we've been helping with the School of Public Health, the School of Medicine, the School of Dentistry. We haven't done anything in the School of Nursing, the School of Allied Health Professions, so we're in many of the schools. Right now we have, and again, so within many divisions, about 65% are within the School of Medicine. Right now I think we have about 125 protocols that we're working on. Some of it's just regulatory, some of it's just managing the IRBs, so that increases our numbers significantly because that doesn't take a lot of time. Other protocols we're doing 100%. And then we'll do everything from IRB, submissions, manage the regulatory, be the coordinator, screen the patients, enroll the patients, be the right-hand person. And again, we do everything from, and we run specimens. So we'll, our goal is to serve everything we can, and to never say no. It causes, it's a bit of a challenge. It's juggling. It's a game to juggle all of this. And so far we're.
So did I hear you say 4 years ago you started with a 20% fraction of one person, and now, if I counted correctly, you had 23?
If you consider all the people, yes. I mean, there certainly are part-time. A bunch of them are part-time, about 11 are part-time. But yeah, that's about how many people we have on our master list call. We do monitoring also. That's one of the things that's been growing recently, is providing monitoring services, especially with the INDs that we're overseeing, as we'll provide a monitor to oversee that, it's being done at UAB, we want it done right.
But perhaps one of the points would be if there's expertise that's needed for a task, but there's not a full-time scope of work for that task. One way to address the need in a professional way, in a fully trained way, is to use CRISP. Is that a fair way of thinking about it?
I would say, so that's our intent, that's what our model is supposed to be, is to provide the service in an expert way, because if we don't do it at the gold standard, then we shouldn't be in business. I mean, we cannot do it badly, because that will ruin our whole goal.
Do you go to the VA?
We do, we go to the VA too, which is quite a challenge, but we're there. We have 3 people who have certification. We
That's a
haven't
really
increased it because
critically important part, because there's lots of people that want to enroll patients in the VA, administrators, legal regulatory,
Yeah.
are so bad.
it's,
That's really important.
Just learn the workaround. That you can use CRISP to take the
I was just going to ask what you involved in terms of, you mentioned that we're going to be under increasing scrutiny to the medical standard. Do we know what the expectations are? I mean, what is what is the gold standard in terms of trial to anti-trial activation and things like that?
You are the source of this information. You know what's national competitive.
I know from pharma in terms of oncology. Let's say that we only know it for phase 1 because then we can. There's a very, it's 90 days. 90 days, and we've asked us, is it 90 days, 4 days, taking weekends alone? It's basically 90 days. So it's a 3-month time frame. So if you look at the Dillman, there's a paper by Dillman, if you look at clinical trials that come from the corporate group, it takes 327 days to get like 3 different times the group met and the first patient should wait 1 year. Sometimes it's 20 years later. So the same body talked about phase 1 is about 90 days. In terms of phase 2, phase 3, we do not have hard numbers. I think we get them very quickly. We can get them. With Jason's involvement, we can go back to the industry and say, what is it that you are looking for? And you send people, what is the time to move about? More importantly, though, we've seen that even if you're a little bit slower, if your accruals are eligible patients, you don't have to use 20% at the end, but you can make up for that. So I think compliance plays a big role. If you might be a little bit slow, if you're compliant, all your patients, 90+% become eligible for the N equal X to provide data. That helps too. But then of course the relationship with pharma. What we've seen is there are great relationship with pharma, Eli Lilly, with cardiology. But a lousy relationship with oncology because we've not tied the two together. They have a silo, we have a silo. We're trying to do this in CTO, so by the way. When you have a genetic rep who does well for you, they like you in oncology, that you trust in the same relationship in cardiology, infectious disease, etc. We've not done that yet. I think the talk show that we have with our physician colleagues will allow us. But we did a great drug we wanted ID in genetic. Most get the vaccine we use for colon cancer. Same thing. We do not do a vaccine trials here in the School of Oncology or ophthalmology, although we do great trials in oncology. Why not? Same drug. We use it in colon cancer, they can use it in for retinal dysplasia or whatever. We've not made the connection. I think there are many opportunities, but I think part of the answer is there are some matrices after Jason moving with finance.
Mansur, can I put a question to the group? One of the issues, because it's important not only for the completion of clinical trials, but it's a financial issue for companies, is the success and recruitment of patients to clinical trials that we take on. Does anyone know what our record of success here is in phase 3 trials? We don't limit to phase 3 because I actually know the data, but we have it. Does anyone know what it is? Would anyone like to make a guess? This is where one needs the anonymous audience technology, so you can actually say what's on your mind, and I realize there's a certain reluctance to say it publicly. So let me do something. Phase 3 trials, and this was actually for a 6-month period, in the first 6 months of calendar 2013. These numbers have been generated independently by 2 different groups. There's the first group that generated it, presented to the second group that said that can't be true. The second group went to replicated. We were within 1 day of the replication. So I believe these data. In phase 3 trials for the first 6 months of 2013, what percent of trials met their stated recruitment quota? Any guesses? 30%. Okay, that's a non-competitive answer. So if that's the way, we would not be certified as a CTO, just so you guys know. But Farmer knows that he what we do. So 30. Anyone else want to wager a guess?
Start and get the CPA.
It's not time to activation. This is, we said we were going to recruit X. We recruited X. We recruited half X. We recruited 2X.
Study the start.
Right. So that's. I'm not saying that we solved, but those issues are not on the table. How do you do in recruitment relative to what we said we were?
75%.
75. 50%. So we're getting the whole range. So let's do an audience response. How many of you think that, how should I do this? That all of our trials were 75% or better? Anyone think we did that? How many of you think that amongst those phase 3 trials, all of our trials were at least 50%? We're getting a little bit of response. How many of you think that in those trials, Penny's smiling because she knows the answer to this, this is not the first time we've discussed this, that all of our trials met at least 1/3? Realize when a company signs us on and we say we're going to do X and we fall short, it costs that company a bucket load of money. That's why there's national, institutionally based certification. So how many of you think that all of our trials met at least 1/3?
I'm going with it.
How many of you think that at least all of our trials met at least 1/3? Okay. How many of you think all of our trials met at least 10%? That's the number. 50% of our trials fell far short of the recruitment goal. Of those who fell short, I will roll here. Those who fell short, the best of that fall short 50% of the time was 33%. And we now go through there. We continue to do that. We are not going to be certified as a clinical trial organization. It's just here. So Lou is not here, but one of the reasons for putting together the clinical trial office is we have to realize that even if cards meets 100% all the time, right? If oncology doesn't, then what oncology does is going to influence you, and vice versa. So we have to think about doing things a little bit differently. I'm sorry, there was a question.
Well, I don't, I mean, I really am not surprised 10%, but then, again, how can you really overall base that if you're having, like, cardiology, you do this type of trial, infectious disease, you do this kind of trial, whereas it depends on, gee, if you're lucky this year, we're going to have a lot of people in here with estrogens. If not, you're just in trouble. So, what do you do?
No, I understand this is not entirely an art form, but realize companies are betting millions of dollars on your estimate of the number of patients you're going to recruit. And if you say, I'm going to do, pick a number, 20, and you don't need it, you may say, that's light, but the company is millions of dollars. And they're going to go to the places that when they say 20, they deliver 25. And the places that say 20, and they deliver 10%, which is true, they're not going to come.
It's that simple. And I never knew the consequence of that number. You know, you asked when you guys hear what number you enrolled with. I asked the nurse to tell me that. And those numbers have consequences, either you're underpaid or overpaid. So, I mean, the point about the education for the investigator is exactly all those things have some consequence down the road. Now the consequences are pretty much bigger than we thought they were.
Right. And that's because companies have gotten wise and realized that they are losing millions on this, and they have decided to pool their performance statements. That's in the pre-competitive space, and that's what Transcelerate Biopharma is doing. And it's happening now.
So rather than pull a number out of thin air, who do I go to in the CTO to help actually get a realistic number?
She paid you for that question.
Okay, for those of you who have the sheet in front of you, you need, that was actually going to be your audience response question. You need to know how many patients are available at UAB for a particular set of diagnostic criteria. How do you answer that question? How do you get those data? How do I do this? Why is this not moving? So you guys have got the hard copy. There's my mouse. I'm looking for the picture that's right below my screen. Okay, so this is not a hard quiz. If you need to do cohort identification, where do you go? What? With Jennifer, you go to Research Commons. Do you know how that's happening? So Jeff Gordon has put together the capacity for us to probe our electronic medical record and identify, at least at a high level, the people who will meet the high-level criteria for your clinical trial. Now, these are not all the granular inclusion and exclusion criteria, but it will get you the first-order estimate of the number of patients. That's called preparatory to research. You do not need an IRB for that. So with an email or a phone call, there can be requests.
You have a record.
We have the capacity to generate that, and Jeff, the answer can come back in a period of time.
Depends, the cohort identification, there's actually a self-service group that we're building for that in the short run, it's not available. So if you come back, you know, in a fairly short time window, the complexity becomes, please don't ask me how many patients we have at a heart. Right. You as the preparatory, that part of the research preparation step has to be, you have to actually think about what your research question is and how to frame it, at least preliminarily. I don't need a list of ICD-9 pages, but I do need you to help me frame what you mean by patients who have had a heart attack. Is that in the last 6 months? Is that ever? And what type of heart attack? Does it matter? Or are you ambiguous? Does it include what types of strokes?
But is it fair to say that we will work with investigators to define the question so you can get a meaningful estimate at a high level, and then you have to use your gut and say, well, I'm going to use gout again because obviously that's my clinical training. There are 50 patients with gout. The likelihood, based on my experience, is half of those might be eligible, and if I'm really good at recruiting, I can get half of those. So I've got, 12 patients that I can contribute to that study. But that is, for us as an organization, that is a huge step forward, because right now, those estimates are pulled out of the air, and half of the time, we miss by a number. And what we haven't yet realized as an extended organization is how much that hurts us, because that's our reputation that's on the line, not just something that's good.
And what you said 12, and then we get 24 patients, We don't have a way to go back and say, well, what is the genetic for that particular cohort of our patients? Is it 12? We make 12. The next study, we should say 12 or 24. We don't have a way to correlate. So the other investigator now in division has no clue what I say. So I think we need to talk within ourselves. Maybe more of these things would help. But certainly there are easy pickings, low-hanging fruit, and then there's the complicated ones that we really need to get for. But those are the simple things that make life much easier if my 12 contributes to somebody else knowing it's 12 for a similar cohort for patients for new study.
Like cancer center, we do provide the tumor registry report each year, and based on that, we do know, like, prostate cancer, which stage, how many patients we had. So some kind of those report may be really useful for the CCTS, depending on the disease therapeutic area, wherever the clinical trial, we have more clinical trials, we can have this kind of.
Cancer registry makes it easier.
Yeah.
Right.
So we should all be so lucky. But perhaps the general point is that as part of some very significant national trends, the ability to be reasonably accurate in your prediction of ability to recruit patients to studies is going to become a requirement to participate. And the tools, the electronic tools that are needed to do that are, most of them are already built. Most of them have already been populated, so to lose question, what is the CTO going to do? I'll have to follow up with him in a sort of a one-on-one, but I don't think he may not have appreciated that this is even going to be out there. And this is one of the things, but not the only thing the CTO is doing.
Thank you so much. That question, and then one left, and then Bob is straight forward. So thank you. I think we should do more of these, but we should come back and say, by the way, what did we achieve in response to the questions you asked? That really is our action that we should take home. So thank you for attending. Bob, thanks for coming together.
Well, and if you have suggestions for what would be useful on the website, please let us know, because we can change it. We've gone through several iterations just in the last couple of days. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.